As we continue our interview with our deacons, this morning we have, or today we have our deacon, Gary Cooper. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Pastor. Good to see you.
Good to see you. First, I want to ask you a little bit about your background, where you grew up, your schooling, and so on. So if you could share that with us, I'd appreciate it.
I grew up in Etobicoke, which obviously is part of Toronto. I was there until age 20 when Deb and I got married, and we moved on to Fergus, and I went on to have a early career in construction. I was a brick and stone mason. I apprenticed in that, and so that was my background. I finished high school, obviously, and at Silverthorne Collegiate in Etobicoke, but then I went into the trades, and I was a brick and stone mason for a number of years, and then I did what they called restoration, where we travel around the province doing repair work on buildings, tear out and replacement and repair, whether old or new or newer, not brand new, but newer. And then an opportunity came up for me to go into education. And so I applied to the University of Toronto and was accepted. I went back to the University of Toronto, and by this time, Deb and I had been married for a number of years. We had our daughter, Tabitha. So we packed up, got rid of everything else, and moved to Toronto. And fortunately, we were able to stay with my parents. And I went and finished my diploma of education, that's what you got at that time when you were a teacher coming from the skilled trades. And then I moved from there in 2000, I'm trying to think of the date now. It was so long ago. 35 years ago, I started teaching, and I've been teaching. Initially, I was teaching students how to build with brick and stone and so on. And then gradually over the years, I became more involved with students with special needs. And the last part of my career, I spent working with students with special needs in a program there. So through those experiences, I took various courses to enable me to do that kind of teaching. So that's that in a nutshell.
That's good. Yeah, very good. So where all did you work? You started out in Toronto, but where?
I worked in Fergus, Ontario for a while, and that was where we were. Then I changed companies, and so when I changed companies, I had travel zones, and for a little while we moved to Orillia, lived in Orillia for a couple of years, and then we lived down in the great metropolis of Turkey Point, Ontario, and so we lived there, and then worked there for a while. When I went to, after following that, I went to school in Toronto, and then we came to Brantford. We tried to find a spot that was central. There weren't a lot of schools that were offering the course that I was trained to teach, but I knew that there were some within travel distance of Brantford. So we moved to Brantford, including a school in Brantford, which I was never able to teach at, but came close, but didn't quite get there. But we stayed in Brantford, and then eventually I settled into a position in Burlington, Ontario, and I taught in Burlington full-time for about 29 years by the time they added up, 29, 30 years, and then I've been supply teaching since then. But all the time we've been living in the Brantford or Brantford area during that time.
So you commuted down to Burlington?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So when did you start attending Central?
Well, actually, we went into Brantford in the early 80s or mid 80s. We attended Central for a number of years. One of my fellow staff members at the school I taught in Burlington was a member of a Heritage Baptist in Ancaster. And we chatted and talked about it, and we were just wondering where the Lord was leading us in different things. And then one thing led to another, and we joined and moved to Heritage Baptist in Ancaster and attended there for a number of years until our daughter reached high school. And then when we began to think about that the logistics weren't going to work out well for her to be going to school and living in Brantford and going to church in Ancaster and try to connect with young people and so on. So then we decided that we would look for a church back in Brantford. So we checked out other fellowship churches mainly, and we ended up at Shenstone Baptist for a number of years. We stayed there, and Tabitha, our oldest daughter, became involved in the youth group and so on. And at that time, she'd met her husband, and they helped with the youth group a little bit before they went on to their travels. And then as the Lord moved us, eventually we came to leave Shenstone, went elsewhere for a while, and then we came back to Central. Joel, our son, and his wife Alyssa, retaining. We just wanted to consolidate and be closer to family and so on. And we enjoyed the fellowship at Central, and they welcomed us back. They didn't cast us off, saying that, oh, you left us once, or you can do it again. Welcomed us in with open arms, and we appreciated that. So we've been here for about 6 years now.
Okay. And when did you become a deacon?
Well, I'm in the final year of my second term, so 5.5 years ago.
And what has been your responsibility? What is your responsibility now?
My current responsibility is I'm chair of the CBA committee that started the 1st of March. Prior to that, I was involved in Christian education. I've enjoyed being a part of the Sunday school program, midweek program, junior church, and so on. So I had been a part of that and supporting all the leaders we had in that. There were numerous ones, and I would tour the classes on Sunday mornings. And then I was asked to take on the Christian school responsibility, or chairman of CBA committee. So that started in March. And so that's been a learning experience for me, a great bunch of staff and a good committee. So on we go.
Okay, so you've also taught at CBA, haven't you, or at least filled in?
Yes, about 3 years ago, things changed in terms of what deacons could do and not be in conflict with their role as deacon and so on. So I was able to be added to the supply teacher list. So I've had the privilege of supply teaching and taught a number of different grades. One of the most memorable moments was very early, about 2 years ago. Our French teacher of the time had to be away for an appointment, so I came in and I was supposed to teach French. And so I had from junior K to grade 1 and a number of different grades throughout the day. So when I go back to visit from time to time, they say, "Oh, you're our French teacher." Well, the only thing we were working on was the French word for apple. And so I was able to succeed with that. But I've taught mostly grade 5 through 8 since then.
Good. Well, I appreciate you sharing both your background and what you're doing. We're grateful for your work at the church, and especially your service as a deacon. And do you have a final word to our church people today?
Well, we just appreciate you so much. And at this time when everyone is isolated from each other, I hope that you're maintaining a connection through things like our videos that we're sending. Our pastors have been faithful in putting communications together from all ages and Sunday school classes. And I trust you, if you haven't connected with any of those, please do so. And we're here to serve. And I'm sure you'll find that all of us as deacons, are happy to speak with you and encourage you. And we are praying for you, and trust that you're praying for us as well as we travel through this period of time. And by all means, please remember our pastors. It's quite a task to manage a church remotely and not be able to be there and meet with everybody regularly in person.
All right. Thank you very much, Gary. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.